Sometimes a dream feels less like a dream and more like a visitation. You wake up with the echo of someone's voice lingering in your mind, a person you once knew or maybe still do. Their faces feel vivid, their presence familiar, their emotions almost tangible. You can still feel how they looked at you or how it felt to lose them, or the warmth of something unresolved between you. And maybe you've wondered, why them? Why does your mind keep pulling you back to this person, night after night, in subtle, haunting ways? Dreams, after all, are not random. They are emotional languages written in symbols. They are the conversations our conscious mind avoids, the unfinished letters our heart keeps trying to send. So let's slow down together, breathe, and step softly into the space between night and morning, where the mind weaves its stories in silence. This is where psychology meets mystery, where emotion becomes imagery, and where your subconscious speaks through the people who appear in your dreams. Because when you keep dreaming about the same person, it's not always about them. Often it's about you. The human mind is a storyteller. Even when you sleep, it continues to write. Neuroscientists call dreams a byproduct of memory consolidation, the brain's way of sorting through experiences, storing emotions, discarding unnecessary details, and strengthening neural connections. But psychologists and therapists understand that dreams are also deeply emotional. Your brain's stage for repressed feelings, unresolved conflicts, and unfinished emotional business. When you dream of someone repeatedly, it's as if your mind keeps revisiting a scene it doesn't fully understand. Something about that person, their voice, their absence, the role they played, is tied to an emotion still seeking resolution. It might not even be about them as a person. Sometimes they represent a time in your life, a part of you, or a feeling you haven't been able to process while awake. In a way, they become an emotional symbol, a vessel through which your subconscious expresses what words cannot. Imagine this. You close your eyes and the world goes quiet. Your breathing slows, your thoughts blur, and in that twilight of consciousness, your brain begins to create. Not out of logic but emotion. It paints faces from memory, voices from longing, gestures from grief. The dream begins not as a story, but as a feeling, a pulse of unfinished emotion that needs form. Maybe it's sadness, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's love you never got to express, or forgiveness you never received. So your mind reaches for a face, one that fits the feeling, someone you once associated with that emotion, someone whose presence once triggered it. And they appear again, not because they're haunting you, but because your mind still believes they hold the key. Psychologically, recurring dreams about the same person often fall into one of a few categories, though they overlap and intertwine like the subconscious itself. The first is unresolved emotion. Dreams replay emotional tension, not for torture but for integration. Your mind tries to process what your heart could not finish. Maybe you never got closure. Maybe you never said goodbye. Or maybe, deep down, you still hold a story about that person. A story your present self no longer believes, but your emotional self hasn't updated. Dreaming about them becomes a kind of emotional rehearsal, your psyche's attempt to reframe what once hurt. Then there's symbolic association. Sometimes that person represents something else entirely. You might dream about an old friend because they symbolize freedom, nostalgia, or safety. You might dream about an ex not because you miss them, but because your mind uses them as shorthand for a period when you felt seen or rejected. In Jungian psychology, people in dreams are often archetypes, mirrors reflecting your inner landscape. The one who abandoned you might represent your fear of loss. The one who loved you deeply might represent your own capacity for connection that you've since buried. Your mind doesn't bring them back because of who they are, but because of what they mean. Let's make this more human. Think of someone you've been dreaming about lately. It might be someone from your past, a friend who grew distant, a partner who left, a person who changed you in ways they'll never know. You wake from those dreams with an ache, or sometimes a quiet sense of peace, or confusion that lingers through the day. And maybe you've asked yourself, are they thinking about me too? Is the universe trying to tell me something? It's easy to want to believe in that kind of connection. And while science doesn't support psychic ties, it does show that shared emotional imprints are real. When two people experience deep emotional intimacy, Their brains actually form overlapping neural pathways. Your memories of them, their laugh, their voice, the way you felt around them, become part of your neural architecture. So, when you dream of them, it's not because they're thinking of you. It's because a part of your brain still remembers them as part of yourself. And in that sense, the connection is still alive, but only as a memory. Memory and emotion are deeply intertwined. In fact, the part of your brain that regulates emotion, the amygdala, is also involved in the encoding of emotional memories. That's why emotionally charged events are easier to recall. When a relationship ends abruptly or leaves behind unresolved emotions, your mind doesn't simply move on. It carries traces of that person in your sensory memory. The scent of their perfume, the sound of their voice, the way they made you feel small or safe or seen. Dreams become the mind's way of revisiting those traces, trying to make sense of them, to file them properly in the archives of your emotional life. So, when you keep dreaming of someone, it's often your subconscious asking, what does this person represent that I haven't yet understood? Sometimes that person isn't even alive anymore, but the emotion tied to them is. Grief doesn't disappear when time passes. It transforms. In dreams, it takes shape again, asking for recognition, not analysis. There's another reason you might keep seeing the same face. Emotional repetition compulsion. This term is used in psychoanalytic theory to describe how humans unconsciously recreate old emotional patterns, often in the hope of achieving a new ending. It's why people who felt neglected as children sometimes chase emotionally unavailable partners. Those who feel unworthy of love seek validation through relationships that mirror that early pain. Your subconscious tries to recreate the story, not to suffer again, but to finally rewrite it. So if you keep dreaming of someone who hurt you, your mind might be saying, this story still lives inside you. You're trying to change the ending. But healing, paradoxically, doesn't come from rewriting their role. It comes from realizing the story was always yours to close. Sometimes, these recurring dreams appear just when you think you've moved on. You're living your life, maybe even happy, and suddenly they return in your sleep. Smiling, apologizing, or simply there. Can feel confusing, even destabilizing. You might wonder, does this mean I still have feelings for them? But often, dreams don't mean regression, they mean integration. Your subconscious might finally feel safe enough to process what it couldn't before. Dreams surface emotions when the conscious mind is ready to hold them. So instead of resisting it, you can ask gently, what part of me is this dream trying to reconcile? It might not be about the person at all. It might be about the part of yourself that existed when they were in your life. A version of you still seeking closure, comfort, or understanding. The dream isn't bringing them back. It's bringing you back. The part of you that was left behind when they left. Psychologically, the human mind doesn't distinguish between emotional and physical wounds. Both activate the same neural pain networks. That's why heartbreak hurts physically, and why memories of rejection or abandonment can still sting years later. Dreaming about someone who once triggered strong emotion can be your brain's way of re-exposing itself to that pain in a controlled environment, almost like an emotional exposure therapy. It allows the memory to soften, to lose its sharpness, to integrate safely into your narrative. And while it might feel uncomfortable, it's actually a sign of emotional processing, your mind choosing to face what it once couldn't. Some people describe recurring dreams about someone as feeling like being stuck in a loop. Every night, you return to the same scenes. The same cafe, the same argument, the same wordless connection. Freud believed such repetition reveals what he called the compulsion to repeat, the psyche's attempt to master trauma by revisiting it until it no longer holds power. Modern research supports a more neurological version. Repeated dreams indicate unresolved stress circuits in the limbic system, your brain's emotional center, that haven't yet fully adapted. Once the underlying emotion is integrated or resolved, the dreams fade. So, when the dreams finally stop, it's not because you've forgotten them. It's because you've healed. Let's explore something tender. What if you keep dreaming about someone you still love? The mind cannot separate longing from memory. When love remains unexpressed, or when it ends without closure, the subconscious continues to replay it as both comfort and craving. You might dream of holding their hand, of laughing like you used to, of them returning to you with softness in their eyes. And you wake up with that bittersweet ache, the wish that maybe the dream was the truth, and waking life the illusion. But love in dreams doesn't necessarily mean love in reality. It means your heart still remembers the feeling of being open, of being connected. And perhaps your dream is reminding you that your capacity for love never disappeared. It just hasn't found a new home yet. Sometimes the person you keep dreaming about is simply a doorway back to your own heart. For others, the repetition might not come from affection but fear. Nightmares about an ex, a parent, or someone who once hurt you can symbolize trauma your body hasn't yet fully released. During REM sleep, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, remains active, while the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning center, is less so. That means you can feel the emotion without logically contextualizing it. This is why dreams can feel intense, even disproportionate. If you keep dreaming about someone who represents pain, it might mean your nervous system still carries the imprint of that emotional experience. Your body hasn't forgotten, even if your mind insists it has. The dream becomes an echo, your inner world's way of saying, there's still something here that wants to be soothed. Healing those dreams often begins not in sleep, but in waking life, through therapy, self-reflection, or the gentle act of validating your own pain. Because your dreams aren't punishing you, they're trying to free you. Sometimes, dreaming of the same person can even symbolize your growth. As you evolve, your relationship with a memory changes, and your dreams evolve with it. At first, the person might appear distant, angry, or unreachable. Then, over time, their presence softens. Maybe one night they smile at you. Maybe they simply walk away peacefully. And when you wake up, you realize you didn't chase them. You let them go. That's not just a dream. That's emotional progress. In this way, recurring dreams can be quiet milestones, subtle indicators that your inner world is healing piece by piece. From a scientific perspective, there's a fascinating phenomenon known as memory reconsolidation, the process through which recalling a memory allows it to be updated with new emotional information. Dreams, in many ways, act as a natural form of reconsolidation. When you dream of someone again and again, your brain is reactivating the emotional trace of them. And if you allow the feeling without resistance, rewriting its emotional context, it's your mind's gentle way of saying, this doesn't have to hurt forever. You might not consciously notice the shift, but over time, the dreams grow less intense, less frequent. They start to fade like old film, leaving behind not the person, but the understanding. But sometimes you keep dreaming of someone you never even dated, a stranger, a friend, a passing acquaintance. This often points to emotional projection. Your mind has chosen a person to represent a certain quality you crave or resist. Safety, passion, closure, validation. They become the embodiment of that desire or wound. It's not about the literal person, but what they awaken in you. In this case, your dream isn't calling you toward them. It's calling you toward that emotion, toward what you need to integrate or embrace within yourself. So what can you do when you keep dreaming of the same person? The answer isn't to stop the dreams. It's to listen to them. Try this. The next time you wake up from such a dream, before you rush to interpret it, sit with the emotion. Ask yourself, what did I feel during that dream? Was it longing, fear, regret, peace? What does that feeling remind me of in my waking life? Write it down if you can. Not the details of the dream, but the feeling. Because the feeling is the language your subconscious speaks. With time, you might start to notice patterns. How those emotions reflect situations or relationships you're experiencing now. And that's when you begin to understand what the dream was really trying to show you. In therapy, there's a saying, the dream tells the truth your mind is afraid to say out loud. It doesn't accuse or judge. It mirrors. It reflects where you are in your healing. So, if you keep dreaming about someone, maybe it's not a curse or a sign. Maybe it's your mind's way of saying, let's finish what we started. Not with them, but with yourself. There's something beautifully human about the way our minds hold on to people. It means we cared. It means we felt deeply. It means we are wired for connection, even when it hurts. But over time, even the most persistent dreams begin to shift. They soften. The faces blur. The emotions are quiet. And one morning, you realize you haven't dreamed of them in weeks. You feel lighter, not because you forced yourself to forget, but because you finally accepted what was. That's the paradox of the mind. It stops repeating the story once it knows you've learned its lesson. So maybe the question isn't, why do I keep dreaming about them? Maybe it's, what part of me is asking to be understood through them? Because the moment you stop seeing the dream as a haunting and start seeing it as a message, everything changes. That person's role in your dream becomes less about their absence and more about your growth. Less about longing and more about integration. Less about them and more about you. If we look at it from a wider lens, psychology, neuroscience, spirituality, they all converge on one truth. Dreams are bridges. They connect our conscious and unconscious selves. They help us process emotion, integrate identity, and navigate transformation. And the people who appear in them, whether they hurt us, loved us, or simply passed through, are the teachers of that integration. Some come to show us our patterns. Some come to remind us of our capacity to love. Some come to help us see the part of ourselves we've ignored. But all of them come for a reason. There's a quiet moment that happens when you stop fearing your dreams and start listening to them. When you wake up, instead of asking, "Why can't I stop dreaming about this person?" you ask, "What does this feeling want me to know?" And in that moment, the loop begins to break. The dream becomes less of a repetition and more of a revelation. Because once you've heard what it was trying to tell you, it no longer needs to speak so loudly. Sometimes, healing looks like waking up from a dream and realizing you're no longer aching. You still remember their face, but it doesn't pull at your chest anymore. You still recall their voice, but it doesn't echo with regret. You can think of them with gratitude, not for the pain but for the lesson. Because in the end, the person you kept dreaming about wasn't your unfinished story. They were your subconscious guide through it. They led you back to the part of yourself that needed to be seen, loved, and released. And that's the quiet miracle of dreaming. It lets us meet ourselves over and over through the faces of others. So tonight, when you close your eyes and drift into that quiet sea of sleep, remember, your dreams are not punishments. They are messages from the deepest parts of you, written in the only language your heart truly understands. Imagery, memory, emotion. If that person appears again, don't turn away. Listen, feel. Let the story unfold. Because maybe, just maybe, your mind is not bringing them back to torment you, but to remind you of something beautiful. That even in the quiet depths of your subconscious, you are still trying to heal. And healing, no matter how many times it revisits you, is always a form of love.